I want you to listen very carefully. A 79-year-old woman is sitting alone in a dark room. The door is locked. Her purse is gone. Her phone is gone. Her shoes are gone. She has no idea where she is. 24 hours ago, she was eating breakfast in the kitchen of the home she built with her husband 47 years ago. Now she is trapped in a facility 200 miles away, wearing clothes she has never seen before, surrounded by strangers who call her by the wrong name. Her own daughter put her there. Her own daughter drugged her orange juice, forged her signature, and drove her across state lines while she was unconscious. Why? Because Margaret Ellen Dawson owned a house worth $1.2 million, and her daughter wanted it. But Margaret had one thing her daughter didn't know about: one phone call, one chance, and she was about to use it. This is her story. Before I continue, I need to ask you something. If you care about justice, if you believe that elders deserve protection, if you want to hear how this incredible woman fought back against her own blood, then take 1 second and hit that subscribe button. We tell stories like this every single week, stories the news won't cover, stories about real people who refused to become victims. Subscribe now so you never miss one. Trust me, you're gonna want to hear how this ends. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Margaret Ellen Dawson was not a rich woman by birth. She grew up in a 2-room shack in rural Tennessee. Her daddy worked the coal mines until his lungs gave out. Her mama cleaned houses for families who never learned her name. Margaret promised herself she would have something different. She moved to Cincinnati, Ohio in 1972 with $11 in her pocket and a high school diploma she had earned at night school. She got a job as a secretary at a small insurance company. She worked her way up. She became an office manager, then a regional supervisor. In 1976, she met William Dawson at a church picnic. William was a carpenter. He had rough hands and a gentle heart. He built furniture on weekends and sang hymns while he worked. They married 6 months later. Together, they bought a small house on Maple Ridge Drive. It was nothing special: 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a backyard with a dying oak tree. But it was theirs. Over the next 40 years, William and Margaret transformed that property. William built an addition with his own hands. He installed a wraparound porch. He crafted built-in bookshelves and custom cabinets. Margaret planted gardens. She painted every room. She made that house a home. They raised 2 daughters there: Karen, born in 1978, and Susan, born in 1982. The neighborhood changed around them. Maple Ridge became desirable. Property values soared. The little house that William and Margaret bought for $32,000 was now worth over $1 million. William passed away in 2018. His heart gave out on a Sunday morning while he was sitting on the porch he had built, drinking coffee, watching the sunrise. Margaret buried him in the church cemetery down the road, and then she was alone. After William died, Karen stepped in. Karen was the older daughter. She had always been responsible. She had a good job as a real estate agent in Columbus. She was married to a man named Dennis who sold medical equipment. They had 2 kids in college. Karen called her mother every Sunday. She visited once a month. She helped with paperwork and bills and doctor appointments. Margaret was grateful. Susan, the younger daughter, was different. Susan had always been difficult. She had dropped out of college. She had been married 3 times. She had a gambling problem she refused to acknowledge. She borrowed money constantly and never paid it back. Susan called only when she needed something. Margaret loved both her daughters equally, but she trusted Karen. That was her first mistake. In January 2022, Karen visited her mother with a stack of papers. "Mama," she said sweetly, "I've been talking to a financial advisor. He says we need to get your affairs in order, just in case something happens." Margaret frowned. "What do you mean, just in case?" Karen sat down and took her mother's hands. "Mama, you're 78 years old. Daddy's gone. This house is worth a lot of money now. If something happens to you without proper planning, the government will take half of it in taxes. Susan and I won't get anything." Margaret didn't like talking about death, but Karen was so convincing. She explained about trusts and power of attorney and medical directives. She used words Margaret didn't understand. She made it sound so reasonable. "I just need you to sign a few things," Karen said. "I'll handle everything. You won't have to worry about a thing." Margaret hesitated. Karen squeezed her hands. "Mama, do you trust me?" Margaret looked at her firstborn daughter, the girl she had nursed through fevers, the girl she had driven to ballet lessons, the girl who had cried at her daddy's funeral and promised to take care of her. "Of course I trust you," Margaret said. She signed every paper Karen put in front of her. She never read a single one. For 6 months, nothing changed. Karen called every Sunday. She visited every few weeks. She was attentive and loving. Then, in July 2022, Margaret noticed something strange. A man she had never seen before was standing in her backyard, taking photographs of her house. She went outside to confront him. "Can I help you?" The man smiled. "Oh, I'm just doing an assessment. Your daughter hired me." "What kind of assessment?" "Property assessment for the sale." Margaret's blood went cold. "What sale?" The man looked confused. "Didn't your daughter tell you? This property is going on the market next month." Margaret went back inside with shaking hands. She called Karen immediately. Karen laughed it off. "Mama, you must have misunderstood. I'm just getting some estimates in case you ever want to sell. For the future. Nothing is happening now." Margaret wanted to believe her, but something felt wrong. She started paying closer attention. She noticed her mail was being redirected. She noticed Karen's husband, Dennis, walking through the house with a measuring tape. One night, Margaret couldn't sleep. She went to the filing cabinet where she kept important papers. It was empty. Every document was gone. Her deed, her insurance policies, her financial statements, everything. Margaret sat down in the dark and began to cry. On September 14th, 2022, Karen arrived at the house early in the morning. She was carrying a small suitcase. "Mama, I'm taking you on a little trip, a spa weekend. You deserve some pampering." Margaret was suspicious. "I don't want to go anywhere." Karen's smile flickered. "Mama, I already booked everything. It's non-refundable. Please don't make this difficult." Something in Karen's voice had changed. There was an edge that Margaret had never heard before. Margaret started to refuse. Karen walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of orange juice. "At least have some breakfast before we talk about this." She handed her mother the glass. Margaret drank it. 20 minutes later, the room started spinning. She tried to stand up. Her legs wouldn't work. Karen was talking on the phone. Her voice sounded far away. "Yeah, she's out. Pull the car around back." Margaret tried to speak. No words came out. The last thing she saw was her daughter's face looking down at her with no emotion at all. Then everything went black. Margaret woke up in a room she had never seen. The walls were pale green. The bed was metal. There was a television mounted on the wall playing a show she didn't recognize. She was wearing gray sweatpants and a white t-shirt that didn't belong to her. She tried to get up. Her body felt heavy and slow. A woman in scrubs walked in. "Oh, good, you're awake. How are you feeling today, Betty?" Margaret stared at her. "My name is not Betty." The woman smiled patiently. "Of course, sweetie. Betty, it's time for your medication." "My name is Margaret. Margaret Dawson. Where am I?" The woman's smile didn't waver. "You're at Sunrise Meadows Care Facility. You've been here for 3 days. Your daughter admitted you. She said you've been having episodes, confusion, memory problems. Don't worry, we're going to take good care of you." Margaret's heart was pounding. "I don't have memory problems. I don't know anyone named Betty. I need to call someone. I need to call my other daughter." The woman patted her hand. "We'll talk about phone privileges once you're feeling better. Just rest now." She left the room. Margaret heard the lock click behind her. Margaret spent the next 2 weeks trying to convince anyone who would listen that she didn't belong there. No one believed her. The staff had been told she was delusional, that she made up stories, that she became agitated and confused. Every time she tried to explain who she really was, they increased her medication. She learned to stop talking. She learned to observe. Sunrise Meadows was not a good facility. It was understaffed and underfunded. Residents were parked in wheelchairs for hours. Food was cold and flavorless. The smell of urine hung in the hallways. Margaret had been checked in under a false name, Betty Chambers. No family contact listed except for Karen, who had apparently visited once to sign paperwork and never returned. Margaret had no phone, no money, no identification. She was completely isolated. And 300 miles away, her house was being sold. On her 17th day at Sunrise Meadows, Margaret met Tyrone Jackson. Tyrone was a maintenance worker. He was 52 years old, a Navy veteran, and a man who paid attention to things other people missed. He noticed that the woman in room 147 was different from the other residents. She was alert, she was coherent, and she was terrified. One afternoon, while fixing a light fixture in the hallway, Tyrone stopped at Margaret's door. "You doing okay in there?" Margaret looked at him with desperate eyes. "Please, I need help. My name is not Betty. I shouldn't be here. My daughter kidnapped me and stole my house." Tyrone had heard confused residents say strange things before, but something about this woman made him stop. "Tell me more," he said quietly. Margaret told him everything. Tyrone listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I believe you," he said finally. Margaret started to cry. "Nobody believes me." Tyrone looked around to make sure no one was watching. "I can't get you out of here, but I can make a phone call. One phone call. You got someone you trust?" Margaret thought about Susan. Susan was unreliable. Susan was irresponsible. Susan had disappointed her 100 times, but Susan had never hurt her. "My other daughter," Margaret whispered. "Susan. She lives in Louisville. Do you know her number?" Margaret closed her eyes. She had memorized Susan's phone number 20 years ago, back when Susan was struggling, back when Susan called crying at 2 in the morning needing help. Margaret had never forgotten it. She recited the number to Tyrone. "I'll make the call tonight," he said. "Hang on, Miss Margaret. Help is coming." Susan got the call at 9:47 in the evening. A man she didn't know told her that her mother was being held against her will at a facility in West Virginia under a fake name. At first, Susan thought it was a scam. Then the man put Margaret on the phone for 30 seconds. "Susan, it's Mama. Karen took everything. She drugged me. She put me here. Please come get me. Please." Susan was in her car within 10 minutes. She drove through the night. By 6 in the morning, she was at Sunrise Meadows with a lawyer, a private investigator, and 2 police officers. The facility administrator tried to refuse entry. Susan's lawyer presented an emergency court order. The police demanded to see Betty Chambers. When they walked into room 147, Margaret was sitting on the edge of her bed, fully dressed, waiting. The officers confirmed her identity using fingerprints. Within 2 hours, Margaret was released. She walked out of that facility on her own 2 feet, holding her daughter's hand. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I need you to do something important. If this story is making you angry, if you're thinking about your own parents or grandparents, please share this video. Send it to your family, post it on your Facebook, text it to your siblings. Elder abuse happens every single day in this country, and most people don't know the warning signs until it's too late. Share this story. It might save someone's life. Let's continue. Susan hired one of the best elder law attorneys in Ohio. His name was Robert Chen. He had been fighting cases like this for 30 years. When he reviewed the documents Karen had made Margaret sign, he found exactly what he expected. Full power of attorney, complete control of all financial accounts, transfer of property into a trust controlled by Karen and Dennis, medical proxy allowing Karen to make all healthcare decisions. Karen had stolen everything legally. Or so she thought. Robert Chen found 3 critical problems. First, the signatures on several documents didn't match Margaret's actual handwriting. They had been forged. Second, the notary who had certified the documents had never actually met Margaret. He was a friend of Dennis who had been paid to lie. Third, and most importantly, Margaret had been deemed mentally competent by 3 independent physicians in the weeks following her rescue. She had no dementia, no cognitive decline, no medical reason to be in a care facility. Karen had committed fraud, forgery, kidnapping, and elder abuse. Robert Chen filed charges with the county prosecutor. He also filed a civil lawsuit seeking restoration of all assets plus damages. The total claim exceeded $3 million. 2 weeks before the trial, Karen called Susan. Susan let it go to voicemail. Karen's voice was shaking. "Susan, you have to stop this. You're destroying the family. Mama is confused. She doesn't know what she's saying. I was trying to protect her. I was trying to help. Please, talk to her. Make her drop the charges. We can work this out as a family." Susan played the message for Margaret. Margaret listened in silence. Then she asked Susan to hand her the phone. She called Karen back. Karen answered immediately. "Mama, thank God. I was so worried about you. Please, let's talk about this. I never meant to hurt you. I was trying to protect you from Susan. She's been trying to get your money for years. I was keeping you safe." Margaret let Karen talk for 3 full minutes. Then she spoke. "Karen Marie Dawson, I raised you. I taught you right from wrong. I gave you everything I had, and you left me in that place to die. You stole my home. You stole my name. You told strangers I was crazy." Margaret's voice was steady. "I'm not confused. I'm not senile. I remember every single thing you did, and I want you to hear this clearly. I am going to testify against you in court. I am going to watch them put handcuffs on you, and I am never going to speak to you again." She hung up the phone. The criminal trial took place in March 2023. Margaret testified for 4 hours. She described the drugged orange juice, the car ride she didn't remember, waking up in a locked room with a stranger's name, the weeks of isolation and fear. The jury was shown financial records proving Karen and Dennis had already spent over $200,000 of Margaret's money on a new car, a vacation home deposit, and credit card debts. They were shown text messages between Karen and Dennis planning the entire scheme. One message read, "Once she's in the home for 90 days, they can declare her incompetent and we get everything." Another read, "Make sure the facility knows not to let anyone contact her, especially Susan." Karen's defense attorney tried to argue that Margaret had willingly signed the documents and that Karen was acting in good faith. The jury didn't buy it. Karen Dawson was convicted of elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and false imprisonment. She was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. Dennis received 8 years as a co-conspirator. The notary who had falsified documents received 3 years. The civil lawsuit settled shortly after the criminal convictions. Margaret's house had already been sold, but the court reversed the sale and ordered the buyers compensated from Karen's assets. Margaret got her house back. She recovered all of her remaining savings. She received an additional $700,000 in damages. The total recovery exceeded $1.8 million. Margaret used some of that money to make repairs to her house, to plant new flowers in her garden, to put a fresh coat of paint on the porch William had built. She also set up a scholarship fund at her church for young people pursuing nursing and elder care careers. She named it the Tyrone Jackson Helping Hands Fund. Tyrone still visits her twice a month for coffee and conversation. Today, Margaret Ellen Dawson is 81 years old. She lives in the house on Maple Ridge Drive. Susan visits every weekend with her kids. They have Sunday dinner in the dining room where Margaret and William shared thousands of meals together. Margaret tends her garden. She goes to church. She reads mystery novels on the porch swing. She is at peace. A reporter once asked her if she regretted pressing charges against her own daughter. Margaret thought about it for a long time. Karen stopped being my daughter the moment she put that drug in my juice, she said finally. Daughters don't do what she did. I didn't send my daughter to prison. I sent a criminal to prison. There's a difference. She paused. But I'll tell you what I don't regret. I don't regret making that phone call. I don't regret fighting back. I don't regret standing in that courtroom and telling the truth. Because somewhere out there, another old woman is sitting in a locked room right now, wondering if anybody is coming to save her. And maybe she'll hear my story. And maybe she'll find the strength to make her own phone call. Margaret smiled. It only takes one call, one person who believes you, one chance. That's all it takes.
American abuse is not always obvious. It doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it comes from the people you trust most, the people you raised, the people you love. If you have aging parents or grandparents, please pay attention. Visit them, talk to them, ask questions. Notice if their money is disappearing. Notice if someone is isolating them. Notice if their behavior suddenly changes. And if something feels wrong, speak up, because silence protects abusers. Your voice protects families. Thank you for listening to Margaret's story. If it moved you, if it made you want to check on your own loved ones, if it reminded you that justice is possible even when everything seems lost, then please subscribe to this channel. We tell these stories because they matter, because real people like Margaret deserve to be heard, because the truth should never be locked away. Until next time, take care of each other, protect your elders, and remember, it only takes one phone call to change everything.